So, my name is Brianna Rae, and this is my personal reflection on the Scotland trip that we took, where we hiked, biked, canoed, and kayaked across the West Highland Way. So, I'm just gonna kind of go through these questions one by one because it's the easiest for me. But similarities between Scottish and British culture with American culture. Um, the main similarity is that they speak the same language. So they do speak English, which helped a lot with our travels there. But there are also some differences in the language that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But mainly, them speaking English was a huge bonus. That was a similarity because it really helped us whenever we had random questions and stuff like that. Another thing that I noticed about a similarity with the culture, it may not be an overall culture with Scotland and and England, but one of the main similarities that I noticed is that a lot of the tour guides were also my age, and I'm 23, and a lot of them, may or may not have gone to college or gotten a degree, but they all had the same mindset that I tend to have, and what I think what a millennial would have in terms of wanting to see the world and wanting to understand what our place in the world is and truly wanting to gain a better aspect of who they are and how they fit into this complex thing. And they are less worried about every pinching penny that they have and more worried about truly living a life that's beneficial to them, that makes them happy, that makes it worth living. And that truly inspired me to continue what I consider wanderlust in myself, was seeing the similarity with the Scottish and the British tour guides, was that they truly have this love for just exploration and discovering more about themselves by discovering more about the world. And I thought that that was really cool. Some differences between Scottish and British culture, various terms and names. I actually have a list saved on my phone because I thought it was so interesting that I started keeping track, I guess. I don't know, I thought it was funny, but they say swanky instead of fancy and crisp instead of chips, and obviously their chips are our french fries, which I don't think I'll ever get used to no matter how many times I visit the UK. They say veg out instead of to chill out or relax, which I thought was kind of funny because we say couch potatoes, which I guess would be their term for vegging out. Instead of saying the trunk of a car, they say the boot. So they'll say, oh, get your backpack out of the boot instead of out of the trunk, which I thought was funny because I was like, it's not in my shoe. I'm confused. Pips are the seeds in fruit instead of we would call them seeds in strawberries, and they call them pips. But the stone of an avocado instead of the pit of an avocado. So pit, not pip. And minter, which I thought was funny. I think one of the tour guides called me this because I was trying to be funny, but I'm really bad at being funny. A minter is someone that is doing something stupid to be funny, but it's really not funny. I don't really know how I should have taken that, but it was one of the terms that they used, and I thought it was funny. And then tickety boo is a term that means just dandy, it's wonderful or something. But those were just some of the funny differences in language that I thought were interesting. Another main difference that everyone jokes about is probably the driving. You drive on the left side of the road instead of the right side of the road. But more so than just the direction of the road that they're driving on, I thought it was really interesting how their roads are built. So we are used to our American roads, which I guess everything is just bigger in America, but their roads are so small, extremely small. And you sometimes don't even have two lanes on a road. Sometimes it's only one lane, and then you just kind of know when to share and when to move over for the other vehicle. And that just kind of blows my mind because we don't really have any roads like that unless you're in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, the driving norms are more than just driving on the opposite side of the road. It's more of they have smaller roads and you share them instead of having two lanes. It's interesting. Another thing was just foods and desserts. So One of the things that I was really excited to try was a veggie burger because I love veggie burgers and healthier alternatives to eating, and their veggie burger was fried. And that kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't really expecting that. Most of ours are just like grilled, like normal burgers in burger joints. But I got a veggie burger from 2 different locations, hoping that it would be different in different cities. But no, they just fry veggie burgers, which I think is pretty interesting. And another thing that I had there was sticky toffee pudding. And I don't know if you can get this in America, but I think it's completely different. So I've never heard of it before, but I got it and it is phenomenal. Like, absolutely the best dessert ever. I had to convince myself not to eat it every night that I was there. So international travel, what I've learned. I've had a lot of experience, and have visited very diverse places. My first location that I went to was the Dominican Republic, and then I went to Greece and went to China just before doing this Scotland trip. So I've had very, diverse experiences. They've not just all been Central America or all Europe or all Asia. I've just kind of gone everywhere. Which I really like because I feel like it's given me the confidence to kind of go in a new place without being worried. But just a couple of the things that I've learned in new places is that read signs. Most of the countries, even if their main language is not English, most of them have signs in English, even if their language is the English. Like everywhere in China I could go and there were signs in English. And especially in Scotland, it's in English, so just read signs and you'll figure out where to go. Also ask for help. A lot of the time, if you're a friendly visitor and you just want to share like their home people's love for their country, they're going to be super like open to give you help and answer your questions. So just ask questions if you're traveling internationally. I've yet to meet a single person that does not want to help me. And even if they don't happen to speak English, if you are in a non-speaking or a non-English speaking country, they will try and put you in the direction of where you can figure out someone who speaks English. So it's pretty cool. It kind of makes me feel like the world isn't as big as it really is. And also, don't be afraid to try new things. I think I'm very much of a controlling person when it comes to my schoolwork and my studies, and probably will be a pretty controlling person in my classroom, although I'm sure that's going to be a habit I'm going to have to break soon. But that, like, traveling internationally has really taught me that I need to try new things. So if it's food or just an experience like taking the metro or, biking down a really steep hill that you think you're going to die on, like I definitely did on the West Highland Way, you just need to try it. None of the things that I've tried in foreign countries could ever possibly end in me like dying or anything. It would just, oh, maybe I get a scratch or a bruise that takes up half of my thigh because I fall on a still bike. But it's still worth the experience and it's so much fun. And then you end up having these crazy memories and stories and things to put in scrapbooks whenever you get back home. And so with international travel, I think over my past 4 experiences, but also including my Scotland trip, I just need to try new things. And I constantly am telling myself that because I tend to get back into my controlling, OCD type way. But trying new things like doing the biking and not holding down the brake the entire time and just really going for it. Or doing the canoe raft, even though you had never done a canoe raft before. And just realizing that whenever you do finish it, that you come out on top and it ends up being this amazing experience and you feel like, wow, I just did that. It's a pretty amazing feeling. So specifically with hiking, what I've learned, the shoes you choose do make a difference. Our day one, we decided to go with our tour guide, who is a veteran with this, and we should have known that he was way above our caliber, but he was like, yeah, I'm wearing my runners, so, which are just like normal tennis shoes. He's like, I'm wearing my runners, so that should be fine, because we didn't want to go to the bottom of our bags to try and get our hiking boots. We should have grabbed our hiking boots because our feet were so sore that day because we felt every rock, every single rock. And we were so sore. It was horrible. But the shoes make a difference. I did not wear my runners a single day after that, and I did not regret it. My hiking boots were the best decision I ever made and the best purchase I've ever made. So definitely with the hiking, the shoes make a difference. And hiking the West Highland Way is not the same thing as hiking Crowder's Mountain, no matter how much you convince yourself that it is before the trip. Um, I've gone up Crowder so many different times that I know all the trails by hand. I don't even have to look at a map. And I've done it in tennis shoes, and it's been fine. I've never had to get hiking boots for that. And I guess I just assumed that it would be of the same caliber. I thought it would be similar, but it wasn't by any means. And I was silly to try and convince myself that it was the same. So, it's not. And I definitely just needed to take that into consideration. But also, I learned that I personally like to go really fast downhill because I am horrible at stopping. I don't know why, but I mean, I was falling over still on the bike and I can't stop when I'm running, so obviously I'm just not good when I'm still. But I'm really fast about when I go downhill. I think it might be because I have a torn meniscus, so I don't like having to put like the braking pressure on my knee. Um, but it was really hard for me to stop going downhill. Like once I started, I just kept going, which I thought was interesting because I've never had that experience before. But I guess it's because I didn't have mountains as hilly as that before. Um, and with the mountain biking, extra butt padding is your best friend. I am so glad that I listened to Dr. J and Jeff about getting the biking shorts because my butt was still sore even with the butt pad. So I cannot imagine what it would have been like without the butt pad with the bikes, especially with all the rocks and stuff that we were going over. The butt pad made the difference. Trust me. And also, it was for some reason easier going down faster than it was constantly braking. So I just kind of I braked here or there and just kind of flew down the mountain and hoped that I didn't spin out of control, which I didn't, and I was very thankful for. But for some reason, it was easier for me to keep balance when I was going however fast I was going as opposed to going like 2 miles per hour because that's when I would fall over. And then also braking correctly is an art form, which many of us had to learn on this trip. And warning people behind you whenever you're braking because there are no brake lights on bikes. So in a group as large as we were, it was really difficult to kind of read when other people were braking. But we kind of figured out when we like who needed to be in the front of the pack and who needed to be in the back of the pack to make sure that, you know, the people who braked a lot, they needed to just be in the back because it was more dangerous for them to be in the front when the fast people were trying to pass them and stuff like that. So that was very interesting to learn in a group dynamic. With the canoeing and sea kayaking, my experiences with that was a little different because I had previously been kayaking. So I had been kayaking down a river prior to this trip. I actually took a winter class and learned all of the techniques and stuff into kayaking. And I thought that it would be pretty much the same, but sea kayaking was a little different in the sense that you're in more still water than you are on a river. So in a river, it's constantly pushing you down. And I mean, if you're going down the river, and you're just basically trying to maneuver the water to push you down the way that you want it to. Whereas the sea kayaking that we did in Scotland, there was a little bit of there like it wasn't completely still water. Like there was a little bit of a drift, both for us and against us at times. But it was definitely more arm muscle to try and maneuver through the sea kayaking than I believe it was to do the river kayaking that we did down the Catawba River for our Winthrop class. And I think that that's just because when you have the water working in your direction constantly, it doesn't feel like you're doing as much work. So that was a little bit different, but I was lucky enough to have a lot of the skills that I had from the Winthrop class. With the canoeing, it truly takes teamwork. So the difference with the canoeing and the kayaking, like the canoeing had two people, one in the front and one in the back, and the back person kind of steered. But with the kayaking, you were just on your own, and you had a paddle on both sides, and you were just kind of pushing yourself and going at your own pace. And with me and my control issues, I just love being the one in control. And so I really enjoyed the kayaking, was comfortable with the kayaking. And with the canoeing, me and my best friend, we decided that I would be the powerhouse because I did have kayaking experience. So we were like, okay, maybe like it's similar or something like that. So I was the back and the back was the steerer. And the problem with not having any experience canoeing is that we overcorrected for everything. Um, I would say, "Oh no, we're going this way." And so we ended up like we would like be straight and then we'd start going right. And then I would be like, "Oh no, we're going right. We need to fix it." And then we'd like overcorrect and go left. And so we were like zigzagging in the middle of the sea, like for no reason because we kept overcorrecting. We didn't know how to fix it. And so we ended up stopping at an island, seeing like an old cool abandoned castle. Um, but then when we got back, we were like, okay, how can we make it to where we're not zigzagging everywhere because we were tiring ourselves out? And eventually it just took a ton of teamwork and really great communication to be able to figure out that we were both trying to correct the issue instead of me just kind of dictating to her, okay, you need to be on this side, no be on this side, no paddle on that side. And so I think that was like an adjustment because our relationship is not really bossy. Like I said, we are best friends. And so I think it was a learning experience for the both of us, whereas I was having to dictate to her what to do, and she was having to just listen and really take into consideration what I was saying and just kind of follow it and trust that I knew what I was saying. And pretty much after that point, we weren't overcorrecting and we could stay as straight as possible. I wouldn't say perfectly straight, but we pretty much learned how to do it well. So yeah, that was pretty cool, learning how to canoe with another person. So camping and staying in a hostel. I have had previous experience with both. I think before this trip, I had camped twice in a tent, like on a campground type situation, which was pretty similar to our trip. And then I have stayed in hostels in Boston, Massachusetts, so in America, and in China as well. Um, and so with my previous experience, I kind of had expectations and they were pretty much fulfilled. But with the camping, it was a new skill on how to keep things dry and keep myself warm. Whenever I camped in a tent previously, it was not raining constantly and it was not freezing at night. Um, so that was a little bit interesting and took a little bit of adjusting. I remember one night we were getting into the tent and it was just my best friend and I ended up laughing because we could not figure out how to keep ourselves dry and our tent dry and our stuff dry and get inside the tent without getting all of like our muddy shoes inside. And so just kind of like figuring out the art form of truly camping and not getting all of our stuff soaking wet was quite an interesting feat. Um, and then keeping myself warm. There was one night that it was so cold because it had rained for like 2 days straight or 2 or 3 days straight. Um, it was so cold that I literally slept in like a sports bra, tank top, a long sleeve shirt, my sweatshirt, like, well, Patagonia like jacket sweatshirt type thing, and a rain jacket, and then slept with 3 layers of pants on and 2 layers of socks inside of my sleeping bag, which was a mummy sleeping bag, zip tied it shut to where you could literally only see the tip of my nose through my sleeping bag, and was still cold when I went to bed that night. So that was definitely like an interesting experience. But we learned that layers were key, and we just kind of roughed it, and it was pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know why that seems fun, but it was in the moment. And then with hostels, I would have to say that out of all of my experiences traveling, hostels are my absolute favorite part of traveling. I also stayed in a hostel in the Dominican Republic. I forgot about that. But they are my absolute favorite part because every single hostel has its own personality, and that's so hard to explain if you've never been in a hostel before. But hostels are, they're like a lower grade hotel. They're not really a hotel. I mean, it's lower grade. It's for a place for you to stay, and they always have some sort of fun personality. There's usually always like a common space near the kitchen where you can go in and get like tea or water or something like that. There's usually always pool tables and like TVs and chill couches and like maybe memory boards and paintings everywhere. And it's just not like a normal hotel, like the normal stuffy hotels that you can stay in and spend hundreds of dollars. Hostels are just like a cheap place where people who love to travel can go and hang out with other people who love to travel for a night for a cheap price. And I don't know if I really learned anything new about hostels except for the fact that I still love them in Scotland and everywhere that I've gone. I don't think I'll ever go anywhere and pay for a hotel ever again because I just absolutely love hostels and love the environment and the cool people. And the workers usually enjoy their lives a lot more too. They usually have so much more fun just being there and helping people. And it's usually locals who want to share their love for their country, which is my favorite part about going to other countries, seeing people who love it. So yeah, the adventure in Edinburgh. This was probably my most favorite part of the trip, only because I got to use my planning skills and put them to good use, which I wasn't actually expecting. I, for some reason, expected our day in Edinburgh to be like pre-planned, but basically, I used TripAdvisor a few nights before we got to Edinburgh and just looked up things to do. Dr. J gave us some things to look at, and I knew some of the other people, like in my group, had things that they wanted to look at. But other than like maybe 5 things, we didn't really know what there was in Edinburgh. We hadn't really researched it because we thought that there'd be pre-planned stuff for us to do. And so I got super excited and just started researching. And TripAdvisor is the best thing on the planet. If you don't have the app, definitely download it because you can look up anything and everything to do in other countries. And normally there's like prices and stuff, like it's for tour groups to like advertise. I don't ever pay for anything for like on TripAdvisor. I just use it to determine what I want to do, which is a quick way to save money. But basically, we knew that we were staying somewhere in Edinburgh, and I was like, well, the Royal Mile is the place to go. So we were going to start on the Royal Mile, which we didn't know when I was planning this, but our hostel was on the Royal Mile, so it made it super easy. But we stayed on the Royal Mile, walked up to the Edinburgh Castle, and then went down through the Princess Street Gardens, visited the National Gallery, which had a lot of cool art in it. It was a lot bigger than I thought. And then we kind of looped around and went to the Elephant House, which, if you don't know, that's where J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter series. It's like this little small cafe in the middle of Edinburgh. And now they're famous because obviously she announced, like, this is where I wrote the entire series. So everybody goes to visit. We didn't stay and eat food, but we just kind of looked around and stuff. And that was really cool to just be in the place where Harry Potter was born. And then we went to Nando's, which is like a famous chicken restaurant in the UK. I had never heard of it, but it's really, really good. And then Greyfriars Bobby Memorial. That was the coolest part that I think one of the guys in our group decided that we wanted to go see, but I looked it up on TripAdvisor, and that is a memorial to a dog that stayed at his owner's grave for 15 years after he died until the dog died itself, which is just beyond crazy. And so they have like this memorial and like this pub right behind it, named after the dog. And so we rubbed its nose for good luck. And then we went to the National Museum of Scotland. We visited Scottish Parliament. We went to Holyrood Palace, which is where the Queen stays whenever she's in Scotland, and the park right next to it. And then we saw the tip of Salisbury Crags, which is kind of on the outskirts of an inactive volcano. Or I think they say extinct instead of inactive. But we were able to kind of plan like this loop around the city and then just kind of loop back to our hostel whenever we were done. And that for me was like the most fun part was, I mean, obviously the planning, but also the being able to do it and realize that, wow, my plan in a foreign country actually worked. And I was able to plan this entire trip like by myself with the input of what other people wanted to do. But I've actually gained the skill to be able to plan something like a day trip in a foreign country. And that was probably one of the best feelings in the world. It was just wonderful. And then another really cool thing that kind of surprised me personally in Edinburgh was that in my sorority, another one of my very close friends, was also in Edinburgh at the same time. And she knew when I would be there, but I had no idea that she would be there. And I didn't even know what hostel we were going to stay at. And she ended up staying at the one right next door. And so being able to see her, and she just like yelled my name, and I was like, oh my gosh, Little! And I just kind of like ran to her, and it was the most exciting thing of the trip. Like literally, it surprised me. It was so exciting, and it was great. And I ended up doing the day trip like with the Winthrop students, and then I met back up with her for dinner, and we just kind of chatted and stuff. She happened to be in the UK for a wedding. But it was just one of the coolest experiences ever to like see somebody from back home there while we were on a trip without her being on the trip with us. And that was a really cool thing. So that was my adventure in Edinburgh. So, elaborate on things that I've learned that will carry into my career. So, I am working, well, will be, I guess, working as a mathematics teacher at T.L. Hanna High School in Little Anderson, South Carolina. And there are three main things that kind of stuck out to me. Um, so one of them is it's all about choosing your tools and resources wisely. And by that, I mean, like with hiking, I needed to make sure that I had the right shoes because without the right shoes, it wasn't going to work. And with the biking, I needed the butt pads 100% because my butt would have been way too sore for me to hike the next day. And with teaching, it's all about knowing what resources you need and what resources you don't, and what is too extra and too much for your classroom. It might be too overwhelming for your students. And I think that that's something that some teachers take years to really hone in and understand. Um, I think, especially as a first year teacher, we're just kind of like, gimme, 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 because we're worried and we're kind of nervous and scared. And we just want to be the best students that we can possibly be for, I mean, we want to be the best teachers that we can possibly be for our students. And with that, we just want to take in all of this knowledge and all of these resources and use them. But sometimes it can be too much. And I think that that's something that I'm kind of figuring out this summer as I'm trying to figure out what to teach and how to teach it and how to do it well for my students. I'm realizing that I can't do everything and I can't use everything, or else it's too confusing for my students. So making sure that I'm choosing my tools and resources wisely, but also not having too much or too little. Um, and also, teaching is a team sport, just like canoeing is a team sport. My best friend that went on the trip with me, her name is Stephanie, and she is also a mathematics teacher. And we have learned over the past 5 years of doing two different degrees together that my strengths are her weaknesses, and her weaknesses, I mean, and vice versa. So, like, her strengths are my weaknesses. Um, and I think that over the past few years, we've realized that we would have never gotten through this degree without each other. And we're not going to get through our teaching experiences without each other and other people who are there to support us at our schools. Even though we're not teaching at the same school, like, we both know what our strengths are and that we have that outlet, and we need to understand that we're there for each other and that it is a team sport. I'm never going to grow as an educator if I don't ask other educators what they're doing and how it's helping their students. And that means even with, like, within and outside of the mathematics field. You know, what a teacher is doing in a Spanish class might also help my students in my mathematics class. And I think just realizing that we can build each other up and help each other make this field such an amazing field for our students and push it past the boundaries that it's been within, I think. And understanding that it truly is a team sport and that you're not on your own in your classroom, even though you might be the solitary teacher for a 90-minute period, you're truly not on your own. And I think that that's one of the most empowering things that I've figured out and that I'm going to continue to use in my career forever. I don't think I'm ever going to just think I'm good enough to do it by myself, because just like I'm forever changing and the world's forever changing, so is education. Um, and another thing is, don't be afraid to try different things. And that's something that I have to constantly remind myself. But that's something that I am always reminding my students of in my classroom. Math is one of those things that students are terrified of failing in. They just think that if they do one thing, they're going to get it wrong. And so they've learned to just not try. And that's something that I am very passionate about breaking in the mindsets of my students. And I always have posted all around my classroom. I did this in my internship, and I'm going to definitely continue it in my personal classroom, is that we have a fail forward mindset. Not them, but we. We have a fail forward mindset, because there are going to be things that we try to do and they're not going to work out. There are going to be lessons that I teach that are not going to go the way that I wanted them to. But that's going to be okay, and it's going to be useful, because how I fail in one lesson is going to show me how I can succeed in another. And using that fail forward mindset, like I did with the canoes, and figuring out how we needed to work together to make us move forward instead of going in a zigzag direction, that's how I'm going to teach my students to continue moving forward in their mathematics and really just in their lives, so that they can continue to push forward and learn from their mistakes instead of trying to avoid the mistakes. because I think mistakes are what makes us all human and makes us learn and makes us better, um, without getting into the psychology part of it. But yeah, so a fail forward mindset is what I'm going to most certainly push forward into my students. So, lastly, I just want to say thank you for having this amazing class that was able to take us to the West Highland Way and push us to physical, emotional, and mental boundaries that I did not know I could be pushed to and still come out successful. So, thank you so much for the experience.